The problem of fatherlessness is enormous. I am convinced that this is the biggest flaw in all of society today, and most likely Satan's biggest focus at the moment.
Yes, and it seems like the problem is big in every nation.
And globally wide, the statistics is devastating.
The problem is not only widespread, it's deep and enormously painful.
There are millions of young children around the world going to bed at night without a father to say goodnight to. And it must be an experience of hell on earth.
Let's take a look at the size of the problem.
Fatherlessness is the biggest problem in the world today, with over 40% of children who do not live with their fathers. Research is overwhelming. When we look at the AIDS epidemic in Africa, we see children raising children. When we look in the inner cities in North America, we see grandmothers raising their grandchildren. Even world leaders have acknowledged this problem of fatherlessness. And all around us, we see single-parent families as well as orphans in our society.
Fatherlessness is the biggest flaw in society. Do you believe this? Research in many countries over the last 5 years have shown that dysfunctional family life is the biggest problem in the world, and fatherlessness is at the root of the problem.
All across the world, 4 major problems stick out as a common trend in society. And these 4 global concerns are family, lack of moral values, corruption, as well as education. And in some countries, they list unemployment, drugs, and violence as some of the problems in those countries that they face.
Stephen Baskerville once said, virtually every major social pathology has been linked to fatherlessness, violent crime, drug and alcohol abuse, teen pregnancy, suicide. They all correlate more strongly to fatherlessness than to any other single factor. It will not come as a surprise that men are responsible for most of the societal upheavals. Robert Lewis, an author of Raising a Modern Day Knight, states that men are responsible for much of our social upheaval. He outlines the following statistics from the United States. Men commit 90% of all major crimes. Men commit nearly 100% of rapes. Men commit 95% of burglaries. Men commit 91% of the gender-based violence and other offenses against the family. Men comprise of 94% of drunk drivers. Staggering statistics.
So we look at all these problems that we face, men at the heart of most of these problems that we face in society. Stephen Baskerville of Howard University says that virtually every major social pathology has been linked to fatherlessness. Violent crime, drug, alcohol abuse, teen pregnancies, suicide, all correlate more strongly to fatherlessness than any other single factor out there.
So how can we as men, as fathers, become agents of change in a morally bankrupt culture? Firstly, we have to know the problem in order for us to solve it. Often, we blame the government for its lack of moral ascendancy and corrupt practices, or we blame institutions like the school or even the church for failing in the responsibility to teach values to the children. But what if the real problem is not society in general, but in the basic unit of society? What if the source of our social ills is not out there, but inside our homes? As leaders of the home, we need to understand the problem by hearing the cries of the children. According to Fathers for Life, 63% of suicides come from fatherless homes. 70% of juveniles in state-operated institutions come from fatherless homes. 40% of all children do not live with their biological fathers. 85% of children with behavioral problems come from fatherless homes. And 71% of children who do not finish school come from fatherless homes.
An example, in Nairobi's industrial area prison, Ivan Gashoki, the one that we talked about in our story earlier, once asked the inmates on one of his visits, how many of you would like to be like your father? Not a single hand was raised. Can you believe it? Can you even try to imagine it? Another student, Dirangu Gunjiri, a PhD student at the University of Nairobi, on his report on Kenyan prisons and police stations found that 46% of inmates were fatherless. These are Kenyan statistics. 60% of juvenile inmates came from fatherless homes, and 90% of convicted rapists came from fatherless homes. This is the problem, and the magnitude becomes even bigger because of issues of divorce. Due to the rise in divorce cases, today's generation does not relate or see a father.
The escalating growth of divorce rates around the world and the growing phenomenon of the overseas workers categorize a significant portion of children as growing up fatherless. In Moscow, Russia, for instance, church leaders estimate divorce rate at 87%. In South Africa, some of the tribes have a custom that when a man marries a woman who already has children, he has the option to accept her with or without the children. If it is without the children, they then go to the grandmother to take care of them. In Sao Paulo, Brazil, divorce rate went up 268% in 2011. The American Census Bureau recorded 2.4 million divorces in 2012. And I'm pretty sure that the statistics, or at least the trend, in your own country is almost the same. Imagine yourself being an 8-year-old boy or girl growing up without your father. You hardly knew him because he left when you were still a little child, or perhaps you never knew him at all. You begin to envy some of your friends whenever their father would show attention to them, and you wished you had a strong and loving daddy present in your life. If your parents are separated and you have an estranged father, you would probably struggle with thoughts like, does he even think about me? Does he even care? Does he love me? For some children, they are aware of this need, but for others, they are unaware, and unconsciously they release this pain, this emptiness, through bad or rebellious behavior. Regardless of the expression, it is a cry of the children.